The storm had descended with no compassion whatsoever. Heavy layers of snow blanketed the roadways, tree branches bent beneath the burden of ice, and the landscape beyond resembled a frozen wilderness. Inside a small weathered dwelling at the town's outskirts, however, a woman called Rosa Moreno busied herself tending the hearth, her exhaled breath still forming clouds in the cold atmosphere. Her possessions were few, only her resilience, her generosity, and employment as a domestic worker that scarcely earned enough to meet her expenses. That morning, she had awakened before dawn despite the blizzard's fury, clearing the entrance steps and preparing a pot of soup from the final vegetables remaining in her pantry. She couldn't have known that before the evening came, her modest, unassuming dwelling would shelter not merely heat, but 15 displaced wealthy individuals with no alternative refuge. This isn't a fantasy narrative, but a genuine testament to how compassion reverberates well beyond the instant it's offered. And if you have faith in generosity, fresh starts, and the strength of unanticipated kindness, please pause now to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Untold Stories 0.4 because narratives like this one remind every one of us of the wonder that still exists in our world. It began when the storm blocked the primary thoroughfare that curved alongside Rosa's residence. By midday, the snowfall had intensified so severely that sight was reduced to merely several feet ahead. Drivers had no option but to exit the slippery roads, and gradually, a procession of polished, costly automobiles started to decelerate near her property line. The initial vehicle was a black Mercedes, followed by a silver Bentley, then a pearl-white Range Rover. Initially, Rosa suspected she might be hallucinating. Who would possibly be operating luxury vehicles in such harsh conditions? Before long, however, she understood these weren't simply average travelers. The 15 individuals who emerged from those automobiles wore costly wool overcoats, buffed footwear that immediately disappeared into the snow, and hand coverings that likely exceeded Rosa's weekly earnings. They appeared disoriented, frozen, and bewildered, raising their mobile devices only to realize there was no reception in this remote location. Rosa paused uncertainly. She possessed barely sufficient provisions for herself alone. Her cabin was already cold and confined. However, when she observed one of them, a woman wearing a fur-trimmed collar, trembling violently, Rosa set aside her concerns and shouted out, "Enter before you perish from cold." They regarded her with astonishment. These were individuals familiar with extravagance, with premium accommodations and personal drivers, not with the modest dwelling of a domestic worker. Yet the tempest raged surrounding them, and Rosa's invitation became their deliverance. Gradually, they entered her home. Rosa expressed regret for the limited space, for the uncoordinated coverings, for the soup that scarcely filled the cooking vessel. However, as the wind shrieked outdoors, none of them minded. The flames flickered, the temperature rose, and Rosa surrendered her personal sleeping quarters so the elderly among them could find rest. Throughout the entire night, Rosa labored tirelessly. She prepared tea using the remainder of her dried plants, provided portions of bread she had been preserving for the coming days, and even hummed quietly in Spanish to ease the anxiety in the space when the electricity wavered. And as she attended to them, something remarkable started to occur. The millionaires, so accustomed to receiving service, gathered together on her threadbare floor covering, their costly timepieces reflecting the illumination of the firelight, and they conversed like common individuals. They discussed youth, hardships, remorse, how fortune had never genuinely protected them from isolation. Rosa paid attention without criticism, her weary hands distributing tea, her kind gaze reminding them of something they had all lost sight of, the solace of being tended to without obligation. By dawn, the tempest had subsided and the highway was gradually becoming navigable once more. Rosa awakened to discover her visitors already standing, fastening their outerwear, getting ready to depart. She anticipated nothing from them whatsoever. Not appreciation, not currency, not commitments. She merely requested that they travel safely. And as the final of their vehicles vanished along the snowy pathway, Rosa exhaled deeply, questioning whether she had contributed sufficiently, whether they would even recall her after returning to their spheres of affluence and influence. However, Rosa had no awareness of what lay ahead for her the following day. At daybreak, the peaceful lane beyond her residence rumbled with the noise of motors. Successively, automobiles arrived, sleek, gleaming, expensive, until the snow-lined road was crowded with more vehicles than Rosa had witnessed in her entire existence. She tallied in disbelief. 10 cars, then 20, then 50. When she finally stopped counting, there were 135 cars extending down the roadway, saturating the morning atmosphere with fumes that rose against the freezing air. From them emerged men and women attired in refined business attire and quality outerwear, each carrying something in their grasp: containers of provisions, sacks of garments, covers, envelopes. Information had circulated overnight. The 15 millionaires Rosa had provided sanctuary to had contacted their associates, their business connections, their acquaintances. They had shared stories of the housekeeper who had welcomed them into her home with nothing to offer except kindness. And collectively they had come back, not with empty arms, but bearing appreciation in every manifestation they could arrange. They delivered new furnishings to substitute her damaged seating. They stocked her storage area with provisions that would sustain her for months. They presented her with envelopes weighted with checks, some displaying more digits than Rosa had ever conceived. Beyond that, though, they delivered a commitment that her existence would no longer be characterized by insufficiency or solitude. Residents peered out from icy window panes, astounded at the vision of so many automobiles beyond Rosa's humble residence. Young ones gestured as workers transported in household devices, as men in custom-fitted business attire cleared snow from her entrance path. Rosa herself remained motionless in the entryway, tears flowing down her face as she murmured, "I'm unworthy of this." Still, every face that looked toward her conveyed the identical response, "Yes, you are." That evening, as the sun descended and the snow sparkled under the streetlight, Rosa's residence radiated with warmth. She reclined in her front room, now adorned with new pillows and containers of produce, encircled by individuals she never anticipated encountering. Her existence had transformed permanently, not because she had requested anything, but because she had offered everything she possessed without reluctance when others required her assistance most urgently. And that, cherished friends, represents the strength of compassion. A solitary deed given without strings can expand outward until it alters not merely one existence but countless others. If this narrative moved your spirit, if it recalled to you the virtue that still persists in our world, please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Untold Stories. These narratives survive through your encouragement, and united we can disseminate hope farther than we ever imagined possible. Before we conclude, I have a particular appeal. Leave a comment beneath and share with us. What's the most significant act of kindness another person has ever extended to you, or that you've extended to someone else? Your testimony may motivate another person to trust in kindness once more. And thus Rosa Moreno's narrative concludes not with the hush of a tempest, but with the resonance of engines, conversations, and souls joined by compassion. She started as a housekeeper possessing little beyond a burning fire and a welcoming entrance. Yet she evolved into something far more significant, a testament that even in the harshest storm, kindness remains the beacon that leads us home.